Hey everybody, this episode of On Deck has sponsored. There's links in the description down below, and we'll talk about it later on during the podcast, but let's get started with the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to On Deck. I'm Bill, that's the Phawx. Phawx, what's going on, man?
Hey, what's going on?
Oh man, you know how it is. It's Thanksgiving time. I've been laying around, not really doing much, and it's been really awesome, but I'm always excited to get back and talk about video games some more. So let's get started and talk about some PC gaming. Let's start things off today with what's on deck. What have we been playing? What game have you been playing lately?
So the game that I've been playing lately is Skyrim, of all games. Replaying it again. But I'm doing it entirely cloud-based. I'm using Xbox's xCloud.
Okay. So you're streaming it to your Steam Deck mostly, but other places as well?
Yeah, so I've been playing almost exclusively portably when I do xCloud stuff. I have been, so 90% of it is xCloud based, but I've been either doing it on my Steam Deck, I've been doing it on all the other devices that I've been getting in, so the RG 505 lately, I did on my Retroid Pocket 3, my GPD XP Plus, which I keep around, kind of just like sprinkle them around my house and just pick up and play anywhere, which has been kind of awesome to play Skyrim that way. Mm-hmm. Only because it's very quickly to just like, okay, what type of quest do I have? And I can kind of just like chip away at it. And I've been doing this for a while now. I want to say almost like 2 months, and pretty far along. Level 63, going through the Dawnguard DLC right now. But yeah, it's like literally almost all of it has been streaming via Xbox's xCloud, and it's an interesting experience. I just wanted to kind of like embrace what that was like. The one interesting bit that I will say is I have said I've been playing 90% on cloud. I did install it on my Xbox Series X just to kind of like play between them. Mm-hmm. So the interesting thing is on PC, if you install the Game Pass version on PC, it's the PC version of Skyrim. It's not the Xbox version of Skyrim. So the saves don't carry over. Like, that sucks.
Yeah.
But the xCloud version does save compatibility with the Xbox console. So they have an alignment more with the console side. The interesting thing is that when I play on the Xbox Series X and I load a game, I get no error whatsoever. When I play on xCloud, it says these assets aren't here. Normally, whenever you install mods on Skyrim and stuff, it's like, this isn't loaded on your machine, so we can't load it.
Right.
So there is a discrepancy, but it is still running it's still pulling Xbox save files, which is interesting. But I wouldn't have noticed that if I didn't play on the Xbox Series X at any given time. So I think that's like the only fly in the ointment, is that I wish that it was cross-save between PC, Xbox, and cloud. It's just Xbox and cloud. So I guess from their point of view is if there's a separate PC version, the cloud will align with the console, which in my opinion is ideal, the best, in terms of like friction, right? Of just like, they really have done a fantastic job of like, just, I don't pay attention to where my saves are going. I just save the game and I quit.
Yeah.
And then I pick it up somewhere else, and it just, whenever I'm doing it, it's like syncing my saves. I'm like, okay, let me wait 5 seconds, and it does it. So it's been great. Kind of just like finding myself. It's funny because it's a very large game, right? It's a very big open world game that you have to sink hundreds and hundreds of hours into.
Yeah.
But I've been finding myself, because I have these pockets of time and I can just instantly just jump into it, that I have now the time for it, because typically I don't. I haven't played Skyrim in, I don't know, years, like on PC. And just with how busy everything has been, I've not really found myself having the time to like, okay, let me sit down on my PC, start this up and get going. Because usually when I'm at this desk, I'm either doing my real life work or I'm doing YouTube stuff. So it's been really awesome. But I also have the benefit that I have like 30 devices that I can play this thing on, and I literally have it all over the place. I have devices in each bathroom. I have them on my couch. I have it on my coffee table. I like have them literally all over my house. And it's like, okay, I can instantly get into it. So it's pretty silly, but I've been jumping between different handhelds and playing.
Listen, I don't know if you're aware, but these devices are all portable. You could just carry one around with you. You don't have to have 30 of them, dude.
I keep them because I have to, but I just kind of sprinkle them around. So that's what I've been playing. So I've been playing a super old game, and kind of like, man, I can't wait for Starfield. I'm like just surrounding myself in Bethesda games. But other than that, Vampire Survivors, I played through. I got every achievement on that.
Wow.
That's a thing that just, it's so quick to start, and it just sucks you in. So, but I finished that like a few weeks ago. That's basically what I've been playing. I've just been playing either the new hotness or super old Skyrim.
Yeah. I feel like the open world style of game lends itself perfectly to portable systems because you can, especially if that portable system has a button that you can just put it to sleep and then pick it back up later exactly where you left off. That lends itself to playing those games and actually being able to complete them. Like, for example, I have 200 hours in Breath of the Wild. I beat that game twice. I love that game. That is my favorite game of all time. Even though it's my favorite game of all time, there's no way that I would have that much time in it if it didn't live on that portable system where I could just either be sitting at my desk and playing it, or sitting on the couch and playing it, or just having it in my backpack when I'm someplace and being able to pull that out. And that's the kind of game that normally scares me off. But on a portable system, I feel like it's way more approachable, in my opinion. So I totally get why you would have Skyrim on whatever portable systems that you're playing. It's interesting that you're playing it on the cloud when I would guess that it would save, like it would just run locally just fine. It's such an old game, but you're playing it on the cloud for that convenience, which is, one of the main reasons that I love the Steam Deck is because it's so convenient.
Yeah, truth be told, I'm doing it for one main reason. I've already played it on PC, and I never played it on Xbox. The primary reason that I started playing it, outside of just like, I want to play a Bethesda game, is Xbox achievements. That's literally it. Like, I would have just played on PC again, but I already have a save on PC where I'm just like, godlike supreme. And I was just like, you know what? I kind of just bum rushed through this game, and I did it before all the DLC came out. So let me just kind of redo everything and feel like what that's like, but get Xbox achievements. So that's pretty much what that's been like. But to your point, like when Uncharted came out, I literally played through all of Uncharted 4 in like 20-ish hours, and it was just super satisfying to just put it to sleep and stuff. So it's I still wish there was an official version of SteamOS that it could be installed on other handhelds, because other, like the Aya Neo stuff, would really benefit a lot from that. The GPT stuff, because it has a full mouse and keyboard, it's a little bit more fine on Windows, and still, Sleep works just fine as well on Windows as well. But SteamOS is just instant. You know what I mean? It's just like, little eyeball wakes up and you're back in it. I really would. I'm hopeful that SteamOS official comes out, because the Hollow ISO that's out there, you can mess around with it, but then like TDP and all that other stuff isn't working. It's just not ideal. So,
if I could get my content creation stuff all onto my Mac, then I would wipe my PC and install SteamOS in a heartbeat, because it's such a great experience for gaming. It really is.
It is, yeah.
But I've got an M1 Mac Mini that I do all of my video editing on and stuff like that. And it just, for like streaming and recording through OBS, it just doesn't handle it nearly as well as my big PC, because my PC has that NVIDIA graphics card that is specifically made for recording and streaming stuff in OBS. So if I could just get my Mac to do all that stuff, I would instantly put Steam OS 3 point whatever on my machine and just have it be a console, because to me, console gaming is just so much easier, and that feels more like console gaming, even if you can do the whole thing where you load up the new big picture mode and stuff. Like, that's not quite there. And I don't know what's up with Windows 11, but Steam runs like garbage on Windows 11. Like, I click it and it just sits there for a second. It's like, I'm not sure what you want me to do. And I'm like, come on. All my other Windows are very responsive, except for Steam on Windows 11. I cannot figure it out. And anybody, there's going to be a bunch of people in the comments. They're going to be like, well, don't use Windows 11. Go back to Windows 10. I know, but I like to try new things. This episode of On Deck is sponsored by Ugreen. Ugreen makes a lot of the things that make using our devices easier, more convenient, and better. Let's say you got your Steam Deck with you and you're going on a trip someplace. You want to bring a charger that doesn't take up too much space. Maybe you want to be able to hook up your Steam Deck to a TV while you're there. Well, Ugreen has you covered with their 65-watt travel charger. This thing is really, really small. The plugs fold in, so it's not going to scratch up anything inside your bag. And it can charge at up to 65 watts for a single device. You can also plug other devices into it too. It has 2 USB-C ports and a USB-A port, which means you could charge all your stuff overnight. Now, let's say you want to dock your Steam Deck in the hotel that you're staying at. That is going to be super easy with this Ugreen 7-in-1 USB-C hub. It features 4K 60 HDMI port, gigabit Ethernet, a USB-C charging port, which will pass through up to 100 watts of power delivery. It also has SD card readers, 2 USB 3.0 ports. It's small, it's light, it doesn't take up a whole lot of room in your bag. It's the perfect travel dock for your Steam Deck. So if you want to make traveling with your Steam Deck even easier, click on the links in the description down below, support our sponsors, and you're supporting the channel. That's it. Back to the show. Anyway, you talked about playing old games. I've been playing an extremely old game, Baldur's Gate 2. Nice. I was listening to a podcast, the Retro... Shoot, I don't remember the name of the show. It's Scott Johnson and Brian Dunaway's show about retro games, and they did an episode about Baldur's Gate 1 and Baldur's Gate 2, and they were talking about it. I was like, oh, I wonder how those would play on Steam Deck, because those are very mouse keyboard centric games. It plays great. You just use the right trackpad to be your mouse, or if you put your thumb on the joystick, you can use gyro in order to mouse around. But it plays great, and it's really cool going back to those super old school games. And again, this is a many 100-hour commitment to play a game like Baldur's Gate, which I'm sure I'll get 10 hours into and get distracted from. But it's awesome on deck because of that sleep wake feature. If Valve didn't ship the Steam Deck with that sleep wake feature, it would not have gotten the reception that it's getting, I think. It's really interesting seeing the sales numbers, but take a step back. How is the font readability, text readability on Baldur's Gate 2 on the Steam Deck? So I'm playing the Enhanced Edition. I think, I'm playing the Enhanced Edition, and then the Enhanced Edition has, you can change the font size. Oh, okay. That's critical for me. I feel like Baldur's Gate 3, I don't know if they fixed that yet, but I played on handhelds, and the text would be so tiny. I'm just like, this is a non-starter. I think for me, one of the things that I love that Steam Deck has been getting so much traction is that there are now eyeballs from developers that are like, how does this play on a smaller device? Right. How is readability? And I know that one of the verification things is having that. Also, apart from it was interesting to me, and I often forget it. Like Miles Morales, I was covering that when I went to the Steam input side, and I was like, oh, let me just map my web slinger to my touchpad. And I was like, let me just assign right bumper to the touchpad. And I did it, and I was pressing the touchpad, and nothing was happening. I was like, oh, why is that working? I was like, oh, because Steam Input just directly says that stuff. It's do web slinger for this action. Oh, right. Right bumper. Because it is supporting actual Steam input. It's not doing the kludge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, right. I totally forgot, because in my head, I'm always like trying to work around stuff. So yeah, it's that type of stuff. Also, just the haptic trackpad itself, just how much it feels like a trackball. So playing other trackball stuff. But I mean, like, there's like things like that just all around. It's a really good handheld, and it deserves all the praise it's been getting. But it's interesting to see, because you look at the sales numbers of the Steam Deck and every other handheld, and like the Logitech G Cloud, right? I think that's sold more. I don't have any info, but because it's in Best Buy and it's in places, the amount of units sold is going to just far outpace any of the other handhelds that are out there, and it's unfortunate but understandable. So like, I can understand why the Steam Deck has sold so much already. But I want it to get to like 10 million units. I want it to hit 10 million units, because I think 10 million is like that milestone of like, oh crap, we absolutely have to pay attention to this now, which companies are, but it's not this universal, like, we have to target this, because as you said, SteamOS 3 really is the most console-like PC experience you could possibly have. And I know that there's like compatibility things that people, like Modern Warfare is not going to run on it and other things. So it's like, there are things that you're like, well, I'm not going to be able to play this, and I want to. But for the amount of games that you can play on it, it's just really, really convenient and nice.
Absolutely. And I do think that Valve will hit that number once they get, I think that they're going to put this thing in stores. I think that's a foregone conclusion. After they get it rolled out to more places and they can reliably meet demand all the time. Like, I had some people leaving comments on, I think, my last podcast, and they were saying that they were seeing like the 64 gigabyte version go out of stock. And like they had to like click a thing to like get in line, essentially. I opened that up. I didn't see that. But remember, it's different regions. And so, I don't know where those people were. But if Valve has the issues, even like slight issues, getting these things into stores, I think it just doesn't do as well. It has to be where you go in. And I know PlayStation and Xbox can't do this either. But you need to be able to just walk in, and it's always there on the shelf, and you can grab one and buy it.
Yeah.
And,
it's
go ahead.
Critical. It's critical. It's a critical feature. Having a demo station set up so that people can actually see it. There's a lot of people that have not been on Steam, and if you're not there, you're not seeing the Steam Deck. Maybe you'll see something else, but if it's out of sight, out of mind. So yeah, having a demo station up in these stores is critical.
And it's a little tough to get it into like video game stores like GameStop, because I can see why GameStop would be like, we sell this. People aren't like, they don't come here to buy Steam games. Yeah. So like that's I don't know if we'll see it there, but a place like Best Buy, they don't really care. They have so much different, like their store is so differentiated that they can pretty much sell anything and it'd be fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in agreement there. I think the only thing that we'd have to see is that it can't come in that brown box anymore. It has to have a little bit more of a fancier presentation for a box, instead of just like, here's your box with a little companion cube on it, just so you know that it's that.
Yeah, and most people, they don't know what the companion cube is. I do agree with that. It needs to have like color, like a color picture of the Steam Deck on the outside. Maybe with some logos for games that you can play, like Cyberpunk 2077, Hades, Skyrim. You put those games on there, games that are not on the Nintendo Switch. Well, Hades is and Skyrim is, but you get the picture. You got to be able to differentiate it in some way. And yeah, you're right. That packaging is terrible.
It's utilitarian, right?
Yes.
Like even like everything getting like, oh, okay, this is that, no big deal. But it's not for brick and mortar shops at all. Maybe they could just make a sleeve, instantly. Yeah, just to kind of solve that. But that is one thing that I think would be the next step into getting bigger numbers. And for me, I feel like 10 million is a number where, like, you know, Destiny, Bungie and Activision, they're like, oh, you know what? Let's get our anti-cheat working on Steam Deck. You know, because the numbers where they can't ignore it anymore.
Yeah, and I would also really like to see, like you said, with a kiosk, like throw Aperture Desk Job in there. That's going to sell so many Steam Decks just because it teaches you what all the different controls do. Because most people are going to look at that thing and they're going to be like, "What the hell is these weird squares?" And that's an oddball thing that I think needs to be demoed. But the other thing is, usually with those kiosks, you can't bend and twist the object that you're testing. So who knows? Anyway, let's talk about some sales. Usually every week I try and have a deals on deck section to the show, and I went looking at the Steam Autumn sale, and I picked out 3 games that I think are really, really good deals for games that I have played a ton and adore these games. 2 of them absolutely will run great on the deck. The third one I'm not so sure about, and I ran into a problem with it. So I looked at Valkyria Chronicles 4, which I have not picked up yet because I already own that. And so I'm like convincing myself to spend another $10 on a game just so that I can play it on my Steam Deck just seems kind of wasteful. But at the same time, I really want it. I have some time to make a decision before I do, because that game is awesome. If you haven't played it, it is a turn-based mixed with real-time strategy game featuring like anime characters or whatever. And it's kind of like set in like a fake Europe, if that makes sense. It's really good. Have you had a chance to play any of the Valkyria Chronicles games?
Yeah, I actually have played Part 4. Not on Steam Deck, but on like the Win 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I played it a while ago. I kind of bounced off of it. I maybe did like 3 or 4 campaigns or whatever, like different like settings that you're kind of going through. It's good, like a tactical strategy type of turn-based thing. But it didn't scratch any particular itch for me where I felt like I had to go back to it. Mm-hmm. But presentation style, I can understand why people like it. The game is fine. It's just that there was a launch 3DS game that came out from Ubisoft that had that tactical top-down view, and it was just quicker, and I don't know, there's something that I just bounced off of it. I do think it's a good game. It's just that something that didn't quite grip me. Mm-hmm. But it might have been that I just been super busy and I didn't give it the proper time.
Yeah, I do that all the time where I play a game, everybody's raving about it, and I'm like, that's cool, but I got distracted and never really got into it. So that's a lot of the stuff in my library. The next one I've got hundreds of hours into, and that is Monster Hunter Rise. That's currently $20. It's always they always have that game on sale though, so you don't need to rush out and pick it up if you haven't. But man, I love Monster Hunter Rise. It is my favorite Monster Hunter game. Capcom nailed it with this game. Did you ever get a chance to play Monster Hunter?
I own them. I haven't really sunk any time into it. Monster Hunter World, I probably put a few hours into, but never to the point where I should have, especially with like some of the GIFs that you see of like people just doing some like really cool combat stuff. Like, man, that looks way better than what I was doing.
Yeah.
So no, I never gave it the proper time. But again, this is Monster Hunter is like, this is also one in the time that I was really focusing on indie games mostly, because indie games were just conceptual games that would be like 2 to 4 hours. Mm-hmm. And Monster Hunter is one of those games that I knew there'd just be hundreds of hours. And it's just like, this is not something that I've previously given time to. It's something that I should, but it's just too busy.
Yeah, that's fair. If you do pick it up, or if you do play it, I honestly would say, and there's going to be people that disagree with me, but I would honestly say skip Monster Hunter World. Monster Hunter Rise is better. That's my opinion. I've said that before, and people will leave comments. They'll be like, Monster Hunter Rise is for smooth brains or some stupid nonsense like that. The game is really fun, and that's all that I care about. Monster Hunter World, looks way better. Like, it's a much prettier game. They went for a more realistic look, but Rise was originally made for the Switch, and so they can't go for that same realism. But I would highly recommend that. Now, the third game that I would recommend that's on sale for the Steam Autumn sale is Elder Scrolls Online. It's $6, and for $6, you're going to get hundreds of hours of gameplay for $6. That game is huge. It's incredibly fun. The combat is fantastic, and there's a lot of customization to your character, which I really like. But I went to reinstall it this morning. I can't get it to install on the Steam Deck. Like, I go to my library because I already own it, and I went down to Elder Scrolls Online, and I hit A on the install button. I tap the install button. I do all of every way that I can interact with that install button. Nothing happens. So I was like, that's really weird. And so I went and I looked at another game that was like a small game because I was like, I don't want to wait for something to download. And I went to this other small game. I hit the button, pops up. Do you want to install it? Where do you want to install it? Elder Scrolls Online will not let me download it to the Steam Deck, which is really strange because I installed it before on the Steam Deck. Have you ever run into that issue?
No, the only thing I would say would possibly maybe go to desktop mode and open up Steam in desktop mode and install it that way.
Yeah.
See if you can that way, or Steam Play Proton compatibility. Those are the only two things that I've never had an issue where I clicked install and it never did anything. That is odd.
Yeah, I cannot figure it out. I am on a preview, but it's only for that game. So I can't say whether or not it runs on Steam Deck. I saw some, like, one of the people that I know, they recently installed it on their Steam Deck, and then they said, hey, and everything's working just fine. Like, they were able to play it. So I was like, I'm going to try it again, and it's not working for me. So I don't know what the issue is. If you guys know, let me know in the comments down below if you're watching this over on the YouTube channel. All right. Do you have any games that jumped out to you as like really good deals on the autumn sale?
I just quickly looked at it. My problem is that I have too many games on Steam, and when I go to look, I have over 10,000 Steam games. So because I haven't played all of them, my barrier of like, should I buy this, is very, very high. So I look at historical lows of games as like my first avenue of like looking at something. But no, unless it's like a new game, sale wise, I have nothing that I've bought. I haven't bought anything. I would say ESO is great, and like Skyrim and ESO type of talk. One of the things that I don't like about Skyrim is that at any given time you can just say, you know what, I want to move my difficulty slider to the left, and my level. I'm level 63 right now, but it doesn't really matter because at any given time I could make that level not matter. And ESO doesn't have a difficulty slider because it's massively multiplayer, and everyone needs to kind of be that level matters. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting that Skyrim has this thing that I personally don't like, but I know a lot of people love the difficulty slider. But ESO being very RPG focused in that sense that your level dictates what type of difficulty you're going to have. RPGs already have a difficulty balance built into them by your level cap, but also the like when you're fighting enemies, they have an indicator of their range or how they're going to attack. So there's lots of small feature enhancements to ESO that I like over Skyrim. So I would just say $6 for ESO. If you've not played that yet, definitely get in on that. So I would just piggyback on what you're saying there. I think it's fantastic, and I'll probably, after I'm done with Skyrim, probably jump into ESO.
Yeah, and the one cool thing about ESO that I really like the way that they did that is, I know that you said your level matters, and it does matter, but it doesn't dictate where you go, because the world changes based on what level you are, essentially. So like if you're level 1, then the monster that you're fighting is going to have 100 hit points. And if you're level 2, then maybe it'll have 200 hit points. And they do that so that, maybe the Phawx is level, I don't know, I can't remember, 83 or something, and I'm level 2. We can still play together, which is awesome. I always hated it in like World of Warcraft.
Right.
Like I was like level, I don't know, I think I was in level 90 or something. And my son would make a new character. We couldn't hang out. I would have to go make a new character too. And he would get bored after, 20 minutes and be like, I want to try a hunter now. And so then I would have to make a new character again. I want to try, and he would keep changing, but it would just be so much better if I could just stay on my main character and still hang out with him. I think that helps broaden the game and makes it less of a, you got to rush to end game in order to participate. You know what I mean?
Right. So I've the only parts of, I'm only like level 8 or 10 in ESO, and going through it, I was like, oh, this is great. This is exactly how I wanted Skyrim to be. So I haven't gone on to later levels or partnered with anyone that was different levels with me. So I'm oblivious to that fact. My only concern was like, if I'm level 5 and I go over to a region that is like level 20, I'm going to get slaughtered. And that is a general RPG trope. And in Skyrim, it's just like, you can just like, you know what? Let me just make this easier.
Yeah.
And now I can go fight that giant for some, arbitrary reason.
Remember that first time I ran into a giant? Oh man, that was great. Just way up in the air.
Yeah. And I think, Skyrim, especially when you have the first person view, to kind of like go back to like retro games, Kingsfield, PS1 from Software made Kingsfield, and they just drop you straight into the game. There is no instruction. They're just like, go. And if you make a left, you're going to get just destroyed by this like squid that is just like pound you in two. And you're like, wow, I just instantly died. Let me not go in that direction. Let me go to the right and fight stuff that's easier. So I love that thing about Skyrim is like, oh, there's a giant. Let me go see if I can. Oh, nope. I went 3,000 feet into the air after you slammed me. I enjoy that aspect of RPGs where it's just like, okay, that character looked like he was too much for me, and he was. Now I know. And there's this sense of apprehension that you're like, okay, what is this encounter going to do? But now in Skyrim, I went for like enchanting and smithing, so I'm just like this uber tank. It's like the most ridiculous build. Like I have vampire powers. My sneak is outrageous. I'm an archer. I'm a master mage. It's just like I have heavy armor that doesn't affect me at all, and it is absurd. But I enjoy it. I just like all this like power that I've gained is like I just enjoy that feeling. And then going back to like level 1 zone and just be like, hey, rat, you remember me? Bam.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to patch notes. Not a huge patch this week, but we have on November 21st, they put out a client update, and there's something very interesting in here. So last episode, I talked about the idea that they made it so that if you're using if you're playing on something like a third-party controller, that they could emulate touch on the thumbstick by just sensing if it was outside the dead zone. And they said, so now they've made that as touch, but this patch seems like they've changed that. Maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but here's what it says. Where did it go? Fixed controller. No, not that one. Added left and right stick deflection as an option for gyro activation buttons. Stick deflection is no longer considered a part of touch cap sense on Steam Deck. So why I cannot figure out why are they separating touch from stick deflection? Because they're both essentially doing the same thing. They're just detecting whether or not you are moving the stick at all, but they've changed it after a week. Do you see why they would do that?
Outside of, I mean, that's a dense sentence to try to parse.
Yeah, that's true.
Um, it's like I'm trying to like visually conceptualize this in my head, and I'm trying to wrap my head around why that would be the case. Outside of like using it, and I would have to say that gyro is an area for me that I have not. I bounce off it very quickly. I don't give it the time of day, and I really, especially with like flick stick, I need to give it more time because I see people just being excellent with gyro, like in terms of just aiming, and it's just like I have to give it more time. So I can't wrap my head around what is happening in a conceptual sense because I have very little experience with gyro based input because of how I just operate. And I have no real input that I could possibly give here.
I just find it weird because last week they said if the stick is outside the dead zone, we're going to count that as touch.
Right.
And now they're saying if the stick is outside of the dead zone, we're not going to count as touch. We're going to make this new category that is stick deflection. And it just seems like a weird change, and I can't figure out why. But that's okay. It doesn't mean that we have to figure out why. It might also be so that you could maybe put thumbstick caps on your Steam Deck, and that maybe they wouldn't be compatible with touch. I don't know. It's weird.
It's curious. Like I have no like maybe rings of radius in terms of how much deflection for gyro input between, because how would you possibly say, okay, you're pushing the analog stick a little bit, we're going to count this as touch but not as analog input, or are you doing both at the same time?
They're probably doing both at the same time, and like if it's outside of its dead zone, then and you're using the gyro for whatever reason, it's probably okay. Well, we can sense that they're trying to like aim at something, so that's going to be the more sensitive part. But boy, you know what? It makes me wish. It makes me wish that we would get a Steam controller too, like a first party Steam controller that has all the stuff that the Steam Deck has, so that when we dock our Steam Deck and want to play a game on TV, we have all of the same buttons and input methods that we have on the Steam Deck. And I made a video saying that I think that next year Valve is going to be releasing a Steam Controller 2 alongside with a Steam console, just based on the fact that you dock the Steam Deck and suddenly you don't have those back buttons. You don't have the touch pads. You don't have touch capacitive thumbsticks.
Right.
And now, like, you can't play the games that you were playing them the way that you were before. And that's a bad experience, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. There was there's this website that takes a look at like kernel logs of stuff, and they have a look at the successor to the Van Gogh. The Phoenix chip. So the thing that's interesting from that article is that its TDP is really high. It's like 35 watt, and Steam Deck doesn't go up to there, and it doesn't necessarily need to go up that much. But it would make more sense. When I was first thinking of the Phoenix chip, I was thinking of Deckard initially. Mm-hmm. But as a Steam machine, especially with that high TDP, it would make more sense for a console only version, and having a Steam controller too. So I could see that area for that particular TDP because it's too high for a portable machine. So that would make sense to use that newer chip in a, SteamOS 3 is this resurgence of the idea of Steam machines.
Right.
And I think Valve was like, well, let's let other people do it, but because they had to make money on it, it was just this like, and also SteamOS 2 wasn't very good. They're in a better position now. But I think that they understand that they need to also be eating the cost a bit, because cost does obviously matter. And if they could get a console that doesn't have a screen, doesn't have all the other stuff, they can actually minimize the cost on that as well and get this out there for maybe like $200. And you'd have a really compelling newer console that would be, 30 to 50% more performant than the Steam Deck is. So, yeah, I could see that when I first saw the Steam Machine thing that you had said, I wasn't in alignment until I saw that TDP number.
Mm-hmm.
So in my head, I was like, that makes more sense for Deckard. But now that I'm looking at that number, it still makes sense for Deckard at a lower TDP, but how high it can scale up to, I don't see a Steam Deck 2. I see a console that can just full power, like you just go full TDP on there, 40, 50 watts. And because you're on mains and not on battery, you don't care about battery life. You just have to worry about heat dissipation, which isn't also a problem at 50 watts. You can still be relatively small.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm more in agreement now with you than since that new bit of information has come up. But yeah, I didn't really like the Steam Controller 1. Like, I liked using it, but how the protruding handles came out. Using it, I tried forcing myself to using it. I bounced off of that really quick, and I think if a Steam Controller 2, if they were, because you look at the Steam Deck, there's there's a second analog stick. There's other things that are there that I think should be in a Steam Controller 2.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I can see that, and I'm hopeful for it.
Yeah. The only issue, well, first off, you said, that TDP number that you were looking at made you think not Steam Deck 2, but
yeah.
Because, getting that much wattage in a handheld, not a great idea. The battery requirements are going to be too much. The heat that it's generating is going to be too much. And that all of that kind of gets in the way of making a good portable system. But you're not saying that this is the only Steam Deck that we'll ever get.
No. For me, I think like when people think of like generational upgrades, first off, all the work that Valve has been doing on Steam OS has been upgrading Steam Deck proper Prime. Like once February comes around, I'm going to be doing my 1-year look at things, because you look at Steam 3.4 with the allow frame tearing option, that's significantly reduced the total input latency. So I'm trying to get hardware that I can do this like official, like instead of me just trying to figure out when I press a button, like actually light up an LED when a button is pressed and then count frames and stuff, do a little bit more official like. But even from my like not great testing, it is 100% better. 100% better for that allow frame tearing. And it's very difficult to actually perceive the frame tearing. Like, I've seen it happen every now and again, but only in specific games. And because it's a portrait-based screen, tearing happens vertically instead of horizontally.
Right.
So a horizontal tear, because your eyes might be focused in the middle, you could see a horizontal tear. But a vertical tear, if it's on the left or the right, it's in your peripheral at that time. So it can obfuscate where you're focusing. So for me, I don't personally think a Steam Deck 2 with the Phoenix that is coming out, the successor to Van Gogh, makes any particular sense. You can run it at lower TDPs and still get, 30 to 50% more performance. But, there's people that are still waiting to have it in certain regions. I feel like there's like this distribution network that needs to be built up first and allow SteamOS to become this more mature platform. Mm-hmm. And when you look at it, RDNA 3 doesn't really extend the ray tracing abilities of RDNA 2 all that much. So if you look at it from a smaller scope, first RADV, the drivers that Valve is using, that is going to be coming, like BVH and all that other ray tracing stuff will be getting enabled later on. But Van Gogh doesn't have enough horsepower to actually do ray tracing. Like, you will be using sub-resolutions on sub-resolutions, and you're just going to have a poor experience. RDNA 3, AMD Phoenix, is not going to help this in any meaningful way. So RDNA 4, which would be a proper Steam Deck 2, at that point you're going to have, AMD should have more hardware-based acceleration for these ray tracing features. And then at that point, you have, a 2x increase plus much better ray tracing capability. Mm-hmm. I don't personally see a Steam Deck 2 with this new chip. It doesn't. I don't think it benefits Valve, because it's all the people that were waiting and just recently got a Steam Deck, and then they're like, oh, 3 months later, a Steam Deck 2 is coming out.
Right.
I think that people like the perception of that is like, oh, well, maybe I'll just wait for the Steam Deck 3 and I'll just keep waiting. I think that they need to wait for generational bumps. However, with a Steam console, that could have it, especially with its high TDP, and Deckard, which could still benefit from low TDP side. I think those are two avenues that we would see Valve use this new chip, just not in a Steam Deck. Only because there's a lot of baggage there, and SteamOS by itself is still getting updates. There's a lot of things like that. It's not, to a lot of people's points, compatibility on SteamOS isn't perfect.
No.
It's still going along. So yeah, I mean, those are my basic thoughts. This is all me speculating. I have no like inside knowledge of anything going on here. This is just me speculating. But for Deckard and a console, when you said console, again, I didn't think it to be true, but then I'll send you the link so you can take a look at it. But it clearly lists 35 watt as its base TDP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned compatibility and verification. Let's say that and I've talked about this on the show before, but let's say that they bring out this Steam console. How do they communicate verification? This is deck verified, and now this is console verified. Like, that's going to be a mess. And I don't know how they can solve that problem, because it's all like this deck verified. What happens when they bring out a Steam Deck 2 in a couple years? Like, how does, like, this game runs great on the Steam Deck 2, runs terrible on the Steam Deck 1. How many different color check marks can we have? Like, do you have any ideas there?
That, I think it's, I think Valve at a core, at a foundational level, appreciates PC architectures in that it's widespread. You can have any disparate part of hardware and play PC games. And I think that the checkmark system is going to graduate into this works via the drivers and Proton as opposed to a performance metric.
Okay.
That's my kind of gut feeling, is that, okay, yeah, this can run, but obviously it's a brand new game and you will need horsepower to run this at 4K. Like, you're not going to run this on even the Phoenix chip. It's not going to hit 4K anything. You're still going to be inside of an 800p scope. Like, when I say 30 to 50% more performance, that's inside of 800p. It's not like we're graduating to any bigger resolutions. You can, but you're going to be trading that off with performance. So, yeah, it's still largely in this 800p area. So for me, the Valve verification checkmark system is more of just, yes, it will run, and it supports all of our Steam input, all that other stuff, like font changing stuff. That I think is going to be the actual checkmark, is like quality of life as opposed to performance.
Right. And then I think that like maybe games would have to, we'll go back to the days when in PC gaming where you used to look at the side of the box and it would have the minimum required specifications of your PC in order to run it. And then the recommended, which are still, like, they're still on Steam. It'll tell you like what kind of hardware you need. And then they can just add to that Steam Deck 2 for recommended, and minimum requirements Steam Deck 1, or maybe the Steam console is on there as well. And I think that Valve needs a way to surface that information to the top a little bit better if they do what we're talking about. Anyway, let's move on. And this, for those of you that don't know, Phawx uses a lot of different hardware, especially new portable hardware that, we were talking about Skyrim earlier. He has 400 little mini consoles around his house in every bathroom, under the sink, wherever you go. If he opens up his trunk, there's 15 different consoles in there, and they're all connected to Xbox to play some Skyrim. Well, none of those won the Golden Joystick's best new hardware, but Steam Deck did. What are your thoughts on that? You get to play with a lot of hardware. Do you think that there's anybody that comes close this year?
Yes. The answer is yes, but I still feel that the Steam Deck is not just the hardware, right? It's not just the hardware. It is Steam OS. Mm-hmm. And Steam OS, for better, even without the compatibility, and there's a lot of people that will just like hard disagree, and they're like, no, I need 100% compatibility if I'm playing on PC, which means I need Windows. And Windows is this whole other bag of nuts that Windows on Steam, on the Steam Deck, WinDeck, is not a great experience by any means. And there's like a big like to do, and I still have to make a video myself to like kind of make that in parity with what SteamOS is. Steam Deck with SteamOS is really what the sauce is, right? The secret sauce is SteamOS, and the constant updates of what they're getting quickly and easily going to like 40 hertz mode. On all of these other devices, I can force 40 hertz mode. And there's a dude in the GPD Discord called Cypher. He forced integer scaling on the GPD Win Max 2. Integer scaling is something that AMD supports, but not on their mobile stuff. So all laptops with AMD's Rembrandt 6800U, you go there, no integer scaling. You connect an external monitor. Oh yeah, you can do integer scaling on the external monitor, just not the internal one. So we can always force things, but that's not a mainstream thing. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, niche. Just do this reg edit and then, do all this other stuff. And yeah, you can make it work. And yes, it feels great in the hand of all the different devices that are coming out. And yes, they are more powerful when you go over a particular TDP. But regardless of anything, the Steam Deck, especially the $400 model, remains the value king and will remain the value king possibly into 2024. So I don't see any of these other hardware makers, because they need to make money on the hardware itself, being able to successfully compete in any meaningful way, but also customer support and all the other things. Like, they're never going to get there, and the sales reflect that. Mm-hmm. The sales reflect, like, they are still 5K digits, like globally, all across all of them. So Steam Deck outsold them when they were just pre-orders, like all of them combined.
Right.
So yes, I totally. The Steam Deck is, again, the most console-like experience. And that was like back in the preview days when I was just like, man, this is just relieving. Like, I don't have to like go and do, like, I'm always like, oh, let me go and do all my crazy nonsense that I have to do to get the most out of this thing. And I don't have to do that on Steam Deck. And it's just been getting better with Proton, with how rapidly it kind of just works. Provided that the game works, it just works.
I don't see anybody being able to compete with Steam Deck on price unless it's somebody like Epic Games, who has their own store. They could make a device that would compete with the Steam Deck on price, because they would then be able to make up that lost revenue on sales of games. None of the other devices out there have a store of their own, as far as I am aware, except for no, none of them do. And so they can't hit that $400 price point and still have the power that the Steam Deck does. If they want to do the same thing that the Steam Deck does, they have to make it more expensive than the Steam Deck. And that's just the way that it works, because Valve can sell it at I believe that they're selling it at a loss.
It's if not a loss, they're selling it what they pay for it.
Right.
So they're not making any money on the Steam Deck whatsoever. It deserves all the praise that it gets. I use the Steam Deck for local gaming mostly. I don't use it for cloud-based stuff, even though it can do it. And it does it really well. Like, you get 6 hours, 7 hours of battery life when doing streaming on the Steam Deck. So you still get really good battery life on it for streaming purposes, but I just enjoy it more when I'm playing PC games. And all of the compatibility layers that should be a performance negative wind up really streamlining stuff. And just the hardware itself that runs games really nicely at 40 hertz. And then with the allowed tear framing thing, it's just like you really have this really nice benefit of both worlds. Mm-hmm. For me, I love SteamOS 3.4. I can't wait for that to become like just official mainline for everyone to just start experiencing that. But yeah, it deserves everything. It deserves everything it gets because, frankly, the Steam Deck is helping these other handheld makers sell more units. If they're drawing more attention to this, so I think the only thing that you would probably see is like the GPD Win 4, which I don't have yet. But that is something that is far smaller, a lot smaller. And I think that would be the only hang up that people have. But then when you get into it, they're going to be like, oh, I'm going to have to pay $900 for this device. Like, yes, it's 20 to 30% more performance, but it's also going to be, 35% more expensive than the highest tier Steam Deck. So it's not like it comes for free. You're paying for that difference. And then you talk about like, well, what kind of support do I have? Oh, I have a problem. I have to send it back to China. And that's a problem. It's you have to pay for shipping back to them. They'll pay for shipping back to you, but you're going to be waiting a month or two.
Yeah.
And that's a hard pill to swallow. And then if you want better support, you have to, use like an Amazon seller or some of the other resellers, but then they bump the price up even more. So now you're just like, it becomes this thing where it's just like, okay, well, I'll just get a Steam Deck. I totally get it. I totally get why it is, and it deserves everything. It's just it really is a fantastic device, and it deserves it.
Yeah, and that's that combination of hardware and software that's just awesome. And I do think that there is room in the market for these other device manufacturers because they're going to keep upgrading to more and more powerful hardware. And if they're running SteamOS, then that's going to make their life easier. And Valve makes money either way. So Valve doesn't necessarily have to upgrade as often as everybody else. But I still do see them doing a new Steam Deck every 2 years or so. And the reason why I see it like that is because PC games keep coming out and keep hitting that new power. It's not like on a console where, all right, this is our device and all these games are going to run on this device and we don't really have to worry about hardware at all because everything is made for this device. Whereas in the PC world, the games are always pushing the envelope. And so you don't have as much time to sit and rest. Of course, the added benefit is backwards compatibility. Your library comes with you when you buy the new system anyway. I don't think that when a Steam Deck 2 does come out, I don't think that that's for the people who bought a Steam Deck 1. I think that's for the people who waited. And when the Steam Deck 3 comes out, I think that's probably for the people who bought the Steam Deck 1. And like that's their upgrade path. More like phones where, new phones come out every year. And I'm not going to buy the new one this year because I bought the new one last year. But that's just the way that I look at it. You mentioned compatibility. And this was very interesting. Pierre-Loup Graffai tweeted this out. He said, "We just added a new Proton flavor called Proton Next. It will be available wherever there is a new major stable update of Proton to test. Currently live with Proton 7.0 2.5, containing the following changes." And then there's a bunch of changes in there that are essentially saying these games are now going to be playable. There's a bunch of fixes to make games that weren't working work better, or that were working but weren't working as well as you'd like better. So now we have Proton Next, Proton Experimental, and then obviously third party we've got Proton GE. There's a lot of different ways that you can try and get the compatibility layer to get your games running. Do you think that this is a major improvement, or do you think that this is pretty much the same that we already have and they're just naming things differently?
So for me, I think it's one of the core foundational things, again, is that Valve is okay with embracing differences, even when it comes to hardware, but also allowing people to use other bits of software compatibility layers to do whatever they want. I personally believe that this is a very niche area, that this is only for the hardcore still, and it's just going to be a small percentage of people that have Steam Decks that are entertaining these ideas. They typically, most people are just going to press A on install and go. No one is going to go, let me go into this and let me select Proton Next. You may have some people that just bought a game and go, why isn't this working? And then see something that says, oh, make this Proton Next. And then they'll do that to get it working. But they won't explore that option if there's no friction.
Right.
So I think I always like options are always the best thing, but I think that it's going to get into nicher and nicher areas of like how far someone is willing to do something to extract whatever. That is like my whole bread and butter has it's always been, but it's a very niche area. It's a super niche area.
I really like that the Valve has done in the past where they've auto-selected the right Proton for the game that you're playing. Where you launch a game and it's like, oh, well, I'm going to use this version of Proton because I know that on the main branch of Proton, it doesn't work right. And it automatically selects that. That's awesome. And somebody might say, well, why don't they do that for every game? Because they can't test every game. It's way too much. There's just like, I mean, just the Phawx by himself has what you said, 10,000 Steam games. Yeah. If he tested 5 games a day, well, he'd be here for a long time.
It's one of those things that one of Valve's chief strengths is, and this is something that Gabe Newell talked about decades ago, is that they realize that they can't compete with their community, so they have to partner with their community. They can't. That's why the Steam Workshop exists. That's why Steam forums exist, Steam guides exist. All of those things are value add that their own customers are putting into Steam, and why Epic Games hasn't been doing well compared to Steam, because everyone actually wants all those features that Steam provides. And it's embracing the community to allow them to do this stuff. So, and you get, I don't know if you've ever gotten it, but whenever you stop playing a game, you get this little thing is like, hey, did this work good for you? Yes or no? I'm always like, yeah, I just make sure that I give that little bit of feedback so that they have this mechanism internally that can try to automate, say, okay, he was using this build a Proton and all this other stuff. Let's try to figure out if we can automate this layer via all these people playing. So I think that's just the way forward. And it's a learning process. It's not something that can be done in the beginning. Maybe for newer, bigger games, they can do it. But for a whole bunch of games, they're going to have to rely on a learned model based on what people are playing and doing. And that's fine. That's just a thing that everyone is just going to have to kind of agree with. I mean, SteamOS doesn't have the best compatibility, but if you think about it from a preservation idea, like Windows is great in terms of legacy. Like if you think, if you ever seen those videos where someone installed Windows 3.1, 3.11 and just kept on upgrading and they would make a bunch of changes. So they go to Windows 95, Windows 98, Windows XP, and every upgrade, Windows was trying its best to keep all of the user settings the same.
Right.
Only until like Windows 8 did it actually fully break. Like things just like, no, it looks like this. But Microsoft Microsoft and IBM are two companies that do legacy very good. But even when they do legacy very good, there are things that do break, like DirectX 8 and Direct Draw. These are things that are getting old on the Windows side and stop working. They do work via Wine, Proton. So as a preservation layer, we should all collectively love SteamOS, because it is a thing that is focusing on making sure that everything runs on modern hardware. So that's why that's like a side thing that I'm just really happy that SteamOS exists. But I think that to wrap this up, the Proton Next is something that is awesome, and I'm glad that they're supporting it. I believe it's niche, but I love that they support it, and that's it.
I think the use of it is niche, but as they over time, Steam Deck, the one that we have right now, is just going to keep getting better, because they now, like when it launched, they had X number of people who have had it in their hands. You can only do so much testing there. Now we have tons of them out in the wild. People are trying so many different games. And when they I'm sure that the Steam Deck is communicating back to Valve, somebody tried this game and it crashed, and it probably automatically sends that crash file to Valve so Valve can try and do something about it. And it's just going to keep getting better over time because of the community, which is awesome that they can lean on that. It's just really, really great. And we've seen it before with, say, the Steam controller, where they said, hey, we can't make a layout for every single game. So you guys make a layout and share them. Now, the ability for us to share layouts is kind of terrible. I like it. It's nice that we can, but it's not very intuitive, and it's kind of hard to find them or whatever, and find good ones, because a lot of them are like, hey, I did a thing for 15 minutes and then I uploaded it, and it's hard to find the good ones. But the fact that you can share them at all is huge, and I think that kind of thing is going to continue to be what Valve does with SteamOS, including things like, when you sit down and you play a game and you say, all right, I'm going to set this to 40 hertz. I'm going to turn these settings on, these settings off. Make it so that we can share that, so that I can just find, the Phawx has a profile for Fallout 4. All right, I'm going to use that profile, and that would really streamline things.
Yeah, that was to kind of call back to that. Before the Steam Deck came out, I actually reached out to Valve and I was like, hey, are you guys going to support, GPU frequency, this, that, and this, all the things that we already do in PC gaming handhelds? And they were like, yes, we are. And I was like, cool. Can I say that out loud? Can I make a video about that? And they're like, yeah. So I did. Before the Steam Deck came out, I made a video saying like, hey, they're going to support TDP control. They're going to support this. And wouldn't it be awesome, since they already have Steam input sharing, wouldn't it be awesome if we could share this stuff? And the thing that I was trying to kind of make sense of is that there are some safety barriers. Like, you don't want someone to just be an ass and be like, oh, let me set this to 3-watt TDP and upload this because now it's going to run.
That's true.
So there's no inherent danger. Like, you can just say, hey, run your GPU at 1600 megahertz, 1.6 gigahertz, and put TDP at its max. That's not going to damage the Steam Deck.
Right.
There is no potential damage there. You can just either make it very good or just be kind of an ass and just have that share just either be flagged as nonsense or helpful.
Right. And as soon as you try it, you can be like, the Phawx is trolling here. I'm going to hit the X button and say that, and that flags it so everybody else. It's like a thumbs down button on YouTube. By the way, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the thumbs up button. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but to your point, Steam input needs something like that other than just download count. Right. Like when you're going, someone 4,000 people downloaded this. Let me try this one because a lot of people are trying this one. I do think that there needs to be like a rating to something, but Steam input's awesome. Like, to the degree of how much it is. Just as a quick aside, PlayStation 2 emulator. When I was doing my video for that, someone made a custom config for Kingsfield 4, because it still had just crazy nonsense. Like, you would press L2 and R2 to look up and down. Like, it was bad. It was very old school thinking. Like, wasn't using the right analog stick. So this guy remapped all the buttons so that it would operate like you would expect it to.
Right.
You just load that input and it worked perfectly. And I was like, oh man, this is just for Kingsfield 4 for PlayStation 2 emulation only. Like, it's very, very specific, but it works perfect. And thankfully someone shared that. So it's awesome.
Yeah, it is. All right. Listen, Phawx, it's been an hour. I think it's time to wrap this up. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find all of your stuff?
I'm on YouTube. My channel is called The Phawx, and that's where you can find me.
PHAWX.
Yeah, that's correct.
All right. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, man. It was really fun, and we'll get you in again sometime in the future, I hope.
Really appreciate it.